your host, Andrew Romanella.
When you play Battle in Mario Kart and you don't turn off any of the items, there are bananas everywhere. I mean, it's like you're losing your balloons because you're slipping on bananas left and right. Bananas everywhere. What's going on, everybody? Hey, welcome into another edition of The Rome Show here on 12ouncesports.com. Broadcasting live on YouTube and on X. I'm your host, Andrew Romanella, and it is a
Hump Day.
Yay. We love Hump Day here on The Rome Show. It's not a hump day. It is a hump day. It's Wednesday. And why was I so confused? Because you're joined today by Rocky Romanella, who's normally a Tuesday character on The Rome Show, but has gotten the upgrade to other days of the week, as you might have noticed over the last month and change. So we have a
Hump Day.
It's Hockey with Rocky to preview the Stanley Cup Finals, which starts tonight. The Edmonton Oilers versus the Florida Panthers. So over the next 7 minutes or so, make sure you get us on the social media, The Rome Show 1, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, whatever the social media is. Go follow us, The Rome Show 1. It's in the bottom left-hand part of your viewing screen right now, or the Mothership 12OZ Sports. But you can write in. You got some questions for Rocky about the National Hockey League tonight, the Stanley Cup Final starting, which goaltender is going to show up for the Oilers, which team's better offensively, who's got the advantage on the power play or the penalty kill, who's got the advantage as the head coach. You want to ask any of those questions? Go to 12OZ Sports, YouTube or X, comment live, and we will talk to Rocky when he gets on the show. But we do not start on the ice. We start on the hardwood. And no, we are not talking Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder here, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking New York Knicks basketball. Why? Because yesterday, Leon Rose in the front office of the New York Knicks made the decision to relieve head coach Tom Thibodeau of his duties as the head coach of the New York Knicks. That ends a 5-year run with Tibbs at the helm of the New York Knicks. Now, I have to be honest with everybody here. I couldn't disagree with this decision more. Listen to some of the things that Tom Thibodeau has done in New York during his time as the head coach of the Knicks, and you tell me whether or not this was a rightful firing, and we can discuss the next steps for the franchise, possibility of winning a championship. Can this coach take you to a championship? I hear all of those things, but this was the best a Knicks team has finished in 25 seasons, their first Eastern Conference Finals since the 2000 season. The first time this team has reached the Eastern Conference Finals since the year 2000 in 25 years. And they took the Pacers to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. He brought the Knicks to back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time since 1995. Okay, yeah, what? You heard that correctly. He had 24 playoff victories in his 5 seasons at the helm of the Knicks. That is better than the previous 13 combined coaches prior to Tom Thibodeau's helm as the head coach of the Knicks. Those previous 13 combined for 7 total playoff wins. As a head coach, Tom Thibodeau had 24, took the Knicks to the postseason in 4 of the 5 seasons that he was the head coach of the team, and in 2020, 2021 was named the coach of the year. The biggest thing that you can say about Tom Thibodeau, and it's been said about him for the entirety of his career, he works his players too hard, he plays his starters too many minutes. And that was a defining characteristic of his time at the helm of the New York Knicks. As an avid listener of sports talk radio in the metropolitan area, the amount of times a fan or somebody came on the air and discussed how the Knicks need a deeper bench, Thibs plays his starters way too much, and this is going to come back and hurt them in the postseason. The amount of times I heard that is the only inkling of not surprised I have that Thibs has been fired as the head coach of the New York Knicks. Okay. But outside of that, you could argue that behind Pat Riley and maybe somebody from the 70s that actually brought the Knicks to a championship, Thibs is a top 3 coach, at least a Mount Rushmore top 4 coach in franchise history. Okay? And it is hard to justify signing a guy to a 3-year extension in the offseason prior to this season. Then you have the best season that you have had in a quarter century. And 2 days after that ends, 3 days after that ends, you fire the head coach that brought you there. And I hear the arguments. But is that a Tom Thibodeau thing? Or is that a New York Knicks front office thing? Was it necessary to trade so much for Mikal Bridges last offseason? Did the trade for Cat need to happen? Was Cat the answer? Or was running back the iteration of Julius Randle and company the answer? Because that, with Anthony Edwards, got the Timberwolves to the Western Conference Finals. Now, that's all well and good, but we're talking about winning championships here. And it's a lot like, since we're going to have Rocky on the air today, because it's hockey with Rocky on a
day.
It's a lot like the Carolina Hurricanes in the National Hockey League. Okay, great. We've made the conference finals 3 straight years. By definition of close to winning a Stanley Cup, you would think the team outside of the team that loses in the Stanley Cup finals, it's the 2 teams that lost in the conference finals would be, by nature, the next 2 closest teams to be close to winning a championship. But for the Carolina Hurricanes, that's not the case, as we've seen for 3 straight seasons of not being able to make it out of the conference finals. And then on top of that, to flip it back, okay, that's exactly what I believe the front office of the New York Knicks decided yesterday when they fired the 3rd or 4th best coach in franchise history and hands down the best coach in the 21st century. There's no argument there. He is the best coach the Knicks have had in the 21st century and in a quarter of a century. And he is no longer the head coach of the Knicks. Here is what the front office had to say. Our organization is singularly focused on winning a championship for our fans, team president Leon Rose said. This pursuit led us to the decision to inform Tom Thibodeau that we've decided to move in another direction. We can't thank Tom enough for pouring his heart and soul into each and every day of being the New York Knicks head coach. Ultimately, we made the decision we feel is best for our organization moving forward. Tom will always be a part of the Knicks family, and we truly wish him nothing but the best in his future. The real question now becomes, who's next? Okay, because if you fire a guy that brought a franchise back to prominence that hasn't sniffed prominence in so long, you better make the next hire money. This cannot be a scenario where you fire this guy who, in theory, there was actually really no need to fire him. Because again, of course we want to win a championship, but let's start with where we are here. Leon Rose, 5 years ago, not in the postseason. I'll take it a step further. 7 to 8 years, atrocious. 5 years ago, sniffing the postseason. Last 4 years, guaranteed playoff spot. Last year, almost guarantee top 8 team in the NBA. at least a top 3 or 4 team in the East. What? Every year you can go into it right now with that feeling as a Knicks fan. Ever since the Jalen Brunson trade, ever since we started to manipulate and shape shift this roster, and it's been good. And I understand a coach can only get you so far thought process, but he's getting you farther. It's not like they took a step back. They took a step forward. And the only name I have on my list before we bring Rocky in here is the one and the only Michael Malone, who in his 8-year tenure with the Denver Nuggets had 401 wins. That is the most out of any franchise during that stretch. 26 ahead of the next closest team, brought the Denver Nuggets as well to a championship, their first in franchise history during the 2022-2023 season. Outside of that, we're trying to go get Eric Spoelstra from the Miami Heat. Those are the only 2 names that I see suffice if you want to make this the right decision for the New York Knicks. But Tom Thibodeau, in my opinion, today doesn't deserve to not have a job. And tomorrow should be the first name on any team looking for a head coach in the NBA's list. That's just a fact. It's a fact that you're listening to the Rome Show here on a Wednesday. May 4th, June 4th, 2025. Going to take a quick, less than a minute commercial break. And then we come back with our favorite time of the week. It's Hockey with Rocky. Stick with us here on the Rome Show, 12ozsports.com.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Yeah, the Rome Show, or I should say the Rome's Show here on 12ouncesports.com. Andrew Romanella joined by my brother Rocky Romanella. Let's just switch the sounder and let's ride into it. Now, inside the glass, Hockey with Rocky.
What's going on, everyone? My name's James Dolan, and I am just eliminating human beings from the MSG Sports Group on a beautiful Wednesday. How we doing?
James, a Wednesday here on the Rome Show, and we don't have a head basketball coach and a hockey coach. What are we thinking here?
If you don't hire someone who has won an NBA championship, then the reason you fired makes no sense. So there's no one else that you can hire now.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that is why I was so surprised with the move that Leon Rose in front office made yesterday, Rocky. And I think as somebody who's a New York Rangers fan right now and is working through the same feelings as a Rangers fan, like now I know they didn't make the playoffs, right? But at the end of the day, over the last 5 years, you've believed that the Rangers should have a good enough team to compete for a Stanley Cup. And you felt like coaching changed this, coaching changed that. Now, are you about to do that with the Knicks too?
I don't know. Listen, we've been to the final. We've been to the conference final 3-4 times now since, between Lundqvist and Shesterkin. I mean, at this point, like you've got to take advantage of the goaltending, and if I'm a Knicks fan, I mean, I really don't quite, I mean, listen, I'm an outside in NBA person. So for me, it literally makes no sense. I mean, back-to-back 50-win seasons. I mean, he's been to the final. He went to the conference final. He shouldn't have been there. Outperformed his class. What do I care if he plays his best guys? Like I don't care. Why do we care? Why do you want I don't understand fans, I think. That's where I'm kind of at with this. Like
Honestly, that's a great
you're
point.
like you're upset that your best players aren't playing. I don't know. Now, I argue that when it comes to too much power play time or I need to see Alexi Lafreniere play, but that game is completely different than when you're playing an NBA where I mean, it's never been about more than 8 guys anyway.
That's a great point. If your depth gets you to 9 guys, in my opinion, okay, like 9 guys that you trust, Rocky, 9 guys that you could play, that is the same equation as having a good fourth line in hockey. That's the way I look at it. So if I have that depth in the NBA, that would be you saying to me, hey, this team's got a really good fourth line. They have a chance to compete here because of that.
The dude from the Fab Five who played for the Miami Heat, and you didn't even know he was on the Miami Heat, right? He wasn't complaining about playing time. His job was to show up and practice hard against the good players.
He's so
But
good.
he's one of the best basketball players in the world at one point.
It's a great point. And you know what?
I don't I
They
just
won a
like I
championship.
just like I just
Two
don't
of them.
understand outside of no championship, which fine. But when it's no championship and you can't even scratch the playoffs, it's one thing. But when you pass Pat Riley as the third winningest coach in franchise history, maybe you should probably let that ride maybe another year.
I agree. And that's my biggest thing. To finish before we get to the Stanley Cup finals here, I thought a lot about the Terry Collins situation for the New York Metropolitans. I felt like there was a lot of people after the 2014 season screaming for Terry Collins to be fired. This isn't the guy that's going to get us to the World Series. Well, what happens the next year?
What's the
2015,
World Series?
you go to the World Series. Yeah, now listen, you don't win. You lose to the Royals in 5 games because Lucas Duda can't throw a ball home, and maybe some other things. But
and maybe leaving Matt Harvey in for too long.
yeah, there's a few things there. But he did that. And it was off of every single person saying he's brought us as far as he could bring us. And that's the same thing I'm hearing now with Tibbs. And to be honest with you, Rocky, there are some scenarios like a Buck Showalter where you've seen that, you know what, this is a good time to let this guy go. He has taken us the farthest. I just agree with you. Looking at it, take it the common fan, and you look at this and go, this guy just lost his job? How? And that just really makes no sense to say out loud.
No, I know. And what I'm going to talk about today is, the disgruntledness of the mismanagement of the MSG Sports Group and how they not only do this to coaches, but they do this to players too. But I will bring it all the way back to the coaching staff, just so you know. I'm gonna go. So, as an MSG Sports Group fan, right, being a Rangers fan, don't particularly listen. I'm cheering for the Knicks, but I don't really like the NBA. But I'm cheering for the Rangers.
Not a huge
And I
Liberty
look,
guy, huh?
I'm reflecting on the NBA, the NHL playoffs as we get ready for the Stanley Cup final, and I can only think about the 16 former Rangers that were participants in the NHL playoffs, 3 of which being coaches, and how we've either deconstructed the team in a way that, man, that could have been nice, or maybe we mismanaged the team. Now, my premise here is that this is super fan based. Okay. I am not here dissecting trades from 10 years ago, people.
But we are the sports show for the common fan. So this is perfect.
Totally. Like when I'm looking at Ottawa, I don't know who we traded Ottawa to get Mika Zibanejad 10 years ago. So I don't know if it worked out. It did for us, I think. Okay. I look at the Tampa Bay Florida series in the first round, and I can't help but think about Ryan McDonough hoisting 2 Stanley Cups for the Tampa Bay Lightning, going back there to retire because of how much he loves it, and thinking, man, he was the captain of the Rangers one time,
Yeah.
one day. I can't help but look at the Washington Capitals. And this is a weird one, but I see Dylan Strome, whose brother Ryan Strome was the center for Artemi Panarin, who we couldn't keep and we had to ship away before we got Trocheck. I look at the Caps and I see Charlie Lindgren, whose brother Ryan got shipped away to the Avalanche, who I watched play in the postseason. I look at Carolina. Jesper Foss just retired. Former great Ranger, right? Perfect third line guy. I come over here to the West Coast, and then my heart really starts to break as I watch Game 5 of Vegas versus Minnesota, and I see Brett Howden score the game-winning goal. And I'm like, this is every fourth line Ranger fan's dream, this kid. He is a heart and soul player. He's responsible. And I just watch him play in the top six and win a Stanley Cup with Vegas. And you're just like, man, that guy could have been a great Ranger. And as they're defeating the Minnesota Wild, I'm looking at Matt Zuccarello, who was the center, like who was the perfect complement to Chris Kreider. And no one's been able to play with Kreider and Zibanejad for the last 4 years. And you're like, man, if we just had Zuccarello to play there, because he was the guy.
So this is 16 players that played for
coaches,
the
yeah.
Rangers and coaches
And they were all in the playoffs this year.
on all different. Now, do we have any remaining in the Stanley Cup? Like, is there another New York Ranger that could be winning a Stanley Cup again?
Yes. But I'm going to get there next, but I just have to mention the Winnipeg St. Louis series because I'm watching Pavel Buchnevich throw up 80 to 90 points a year for St. Louis.
So good.
He had 8 points, top 2 in his team in points in his round 1 series. But then I'm watching Neil Pionk, who could have been just a stud defenseman, sign a 7-year extension, then play 46 minutes in Game 7, assisted on every goal to win that series. Wow. By the way, Winnipeg Jets President's Trophy winners, head coached by former assistant coach Scott Arniel of the New York Rangers.
Weren't you on here talking about how they should have hired him a few years ago?
Which leads me to the Stanley Cup Finals. Because on Florida, a centerpiece to the defensive unit in Florida is one Nico Mikkola, who we picked up at a trade deadline move. Picked up 2 years ago from a trade deadline, 3 years ago now, at a trade deadline move that was like celebrated by all of us. It was the end of Gerard Gallant's reign in New York as we were, doing the Tom Thibodeau thing and getting deep into the playoffs, but not winning. And Nico Mikkola was a great pickup, but we couldn't re-sign him. And now he is the centerpiece. He won a Stanley Cup with Florida last year and is one of the people that are like, man, Nico Mikkola is really good. But I digress back to that coaching statement you just made. It was COVID. The New York Rangers were playing in the bubble. And that year, David Quinn was the head coach of the Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
David Quinn gets sick and cannot coach. And the Rangers call up their AHL head coach, Chris Knobloch. Chris Knobloch has rapport with all of these AHL guys that are playing on the team, and you're like, oh wow, this is a really, really bright future. David Quinn gets fired from the Rangers. Oh, maybe it's time for Chris Knobloch to come up. Nope. We hire Gerard Gallant, go to the Eastern Conference Final. Then we get stomped out by the Devils in first round. Now it's time. We fire Gerard Gallant. Now it's time for Chris Knobloch. Now at this time, I didn't know Chris Knobloch's deep history.
Okay.
I didn't. But the Rangers don't hire Chris Knobloch. We instead go with Peter Laviolette. We get back to the playoffs. We get back to the Eastern Conference Final. We win the President's Trophy. Looks good. Now, while that President's Trophy winning season happens, the Edmonton Oilers fire their coach, whose name is escaping me right now, but he's a finalist for the Boston Bruins job. And they hire Connor McDavid's junior hockey head coach, the guy that coached the best player in the world in junior hockey. That guy is Chris Knobloch.
Wow.
Chris Knobloch proceeds to take the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid to the Stanley Cup Final, losing by 1 goal in 7 games, and has since returned to the Stanley Cup Final in triumphant fashion to reclaim that title and help Connor McDavid win his first Stanley Cup. That is Chris Knobloch, who was good enough to coach the best player in the world, but not the New York Rangers.
So is it a Mike Dolan thing? Is it that they need to redo their entire front office? Because that 10-minute soliloquy right there tells me that this is a history of the New York Rangers being very bad at making decisions.
And I'm sure, by the way, if I'm any other fan, I could do the same thing, right? Like I could do the
Probably.
same thing. I could do something similar. But I think on this day after they fire Thibodeau, right? And I'm looking at day one of the Stanley Cup final. I'm like, who do I want to win? Right?
Super similar.
Who do I think's gonna win? Right? I've got Edmonton, who is known as the goal scoring team, but Florida has scored the equivalent amount of goals, actually won more goals than this playoffs. I'm looking at Florida Panthers, who are dominating the penalty kill, but I'm looking at Edmonton, who's dominating the power play. I'm looking at equivalent goaltending. I'm looking at equivalent depth. And I'm like, who's going to win this series? And my pick is going to be with Chris Knobloch and the Edmonton Oilers because I'm going to follow my fanship and prove that he should have been the coach of the Rangers
And he's
and
going to
helping Connor
with the
McDavid hoist his first Stanley Cup. And that's how I get to my finals prediction today.
I love that. And to go off of what Rocky was talking about, two of the top offensive teams in the National Hockey League. Edmonton scores 4.06 goals per game, Florida 3.88. Edmonton's power play scores at a 30% clip. That's actually kind of reckless abandonment. Here's your goaltending matchup. Both teams are good defensively. Edmonton is only giving up 2.81 goals per game, Rocky. So clearly Skinner in between the pipes has really worked out for them in this postseason. However, Sergei Bobrovsky, 2.29 with a 912 save percentage. So here's the one advantage I see, okay? Or not advantage, one area that you have to look at on both sides. For Florida, it's obviously just be the best defensive team. You have the best goalie. You are better defensively. Be that team, and you have a chance here. For Edmonton, it's force Florida into stupid decisions. They have the most penalty minutes, Rocky, in the postseason at 479. You do not want to allow the Edmonton Oilers onto the power play.
No, you don't. You don't want to allow that. I'll say two things there. When it comes to Sergei Bobrovsky, if you look at last year's final, the only of the three out of the 7 games that Edmonton won, they had to score 5 or more goals. In all 4 games they lost, they got to 4, they got to 3, but they never scored more than
not enough.
4 and 5. And so that's something. And then when it comes to Florida, yes, tight checking on offense is probably their best defense, right? Tight checking, physical play all over the ice. The thing that no one has been able to do to Florida is to allow them to self-destruct. Edmonton cannot get sucked into Florida's physical game. That's where Carolina got beat. You have to play a clean game. You have to, like you said, allow Florida's penalty kill to beat you so that your power play can beat them. It's your only advantage. And you have to figure out a way to create a transition-based game. That is where you're going to thrive. That's where Bobrovsky's on his heels. Your best talent and Connor McDavid going to thrive. You need to play high flying. Like you need to open up the game. And to do that, I think you need to slow it down, to speed it up. You need to stay out of the box. And if you can do those things, I think Edmonton hoists the Stanley Cup this year.
I think it's going 7 again. And I know that that's like simple prediction. It went 7 last year. No, I don't think it's going 7 the same way though. Like I think this is going to be a left hook, right hook type series.
I think you might be right. I think it's going to be 6 though. I don't know. I don't know if Florida's got the legs for another 7. 3 years in a row in the final. This is typically where we see the teams taper off, and it's typically after like a back-to-back win, right? Like this is where you saw Tampa Bay taper off. You know, it is not easy to be here 3 years in a row,
Right.
especially in today's game.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
And the
you're
type of
talking
game they're trying to play.
exactly. So I think that I don't know if it's got 7 in it. I've got Edmonton in 6. I've been completely wrong about all of my predictions. So listeners, if you're gonna put money on or bananas on me, just there's your warning sign.
I love that out of you. I have Florida in 7 again. And I think that the reason why I feel Florida can win this thing, even though what you just mentioned makes a lot of sense, is because they haven't given me that illusion all postseason that
No,
that switch is going to flip off, that they're going to kind of die out. It's like they're
correct.
just as fresh as a team that's never won the Stanley Cup. And I just think Paul Maurice is an elite level head coach from all angles. Like, he plays every side of the fence. Like, he'll keep these guys light if he needs to. He gets on if he needs to. He lets his assistants do their job. He seems like he has the team in the right mindset, and I think that that's a huge advantage.
I agree, and you're right about that. The Florida has literally they've they've shown us they are the same team. They are no different. And that's why I think Edmonton's prowess has to be in what they learned last year. And I think that they're playing not only with the confidence they can beat Florida because they had that last year, they have confidence in their back end. They have confidence in their defense, they have confidence in their goaltender, and I think that complement gives them the edge finally. And I want to see them capitalize on that edge.
I feel that. I love Connor McDavid. Rocky, we have a write-in. Okay, we have a write-in. A new write-in. First time, not long time, but hopefully longer time now after this, since I sent him the link to the show. I'll put it up on the screen for you here. Rocky, we're missing the word does, McJesus as a talent rank as a player in your lifetime?
Top. I mean, one of the best. I mean, I think when you look at a complete player, I think of Sidney Crosby. I think of a complete hockey player. When I think of the best power forward, I think Alexander Ovechkin. When I think of overall all talent, like just on ice talent, that is Connor McDavid. From speed to skill to awareness and prowess and the ability to make his teammates better. I just think he's a complete package from a talent standpoint. Crosby just gets the air on he is the best player. Like, he is the best hockey like captain overall. But I think from a pure skills and talent standpoint, you're seeing what we've been building up since Gretzky. And you're seeing that today. You're seeing the modern skill. I mean, it's full speed. I mean, he is the fastest guy in the NHL.
He's so fast. It's ridiculous, dude.
He's
It's
the
like,
fastest guy in the NHL. He's also one of the most skilled.
yeah.
He's not your top goal scorer because he's got, but he's your talent. He is the best talent in the game right now.
You know how people say, like, it's you're good at a bunch of things, you're not great at one thing type idea?
Yes.
I see the opposite for Connor McDavid. I actually think, kind of like what people talk about with LeBron James, like, Connor McDavid could be the best centerman on your team, the best winger on your team, the best defenseman on your team, best goal scorer, best guy assisting. I bet he could probably be the best penalty killer, as long with being the best power play guy. That is such a unicorn for a player to be able to do those things. And I think there's a little bit lost on Connor McDavid from the average North American hockey fan because he plays in Edmonton, kind of like what happened to Mike Trout for 10 years in his career, where it's like he's out there in Anaheim. I don't know if enough people are actually watching until this moment how good this player really is.
No, you have no clue. You unless you're a hockey fan, you have no clue because you're not seeing the clips of him in practice skating faster backwards than one of his teammates is skating forwards.
Yeah.
You don't get that unless you're a hockey fan.
Right.
But if you're obviously, but like, hey, it's no different than a football fan watching whoever throw the ball 75 yards and saying that's the best arm I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, but you're right about that. He doesn't get much play. So I'm going with Edmonton. Love the write-in, Mr. Ward.
That's
Keep it
good
coming.
stuff. Yeah, McJesus. At first, I was like, you went right into it. You're like, I know exactly what he's talking about. In my mind, I'm like, is this like a hockey movie that I missed? Or
No, come on.
then I thought about it as you started answering. Rocky, last thoughts before we get out of here.
I hate the Thibodeau thing. And how about them Mets, by the way?
Yeah, man. How about them Mets? I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut here and like watch it as it goes, and then we'll see where we are in 50 games. But I've had a lot of fun. I don't have an insane amount of fun watching regular season baseball in June often, and right now I am.
I even stayed up late and caught like 3 innings of the
How
game
about
last night.
that?
Or
All
yeah, I
right.
know, crazy.
Honestly, West Coast baseball, if you're awake at nights, honestly, some of my favorite, but you just have to be awake at night.
Well, they're playing Shohei too, so you got to pay
Yeah,
attention a
you
little bit.
kind of got to pay attention. All right, Rocky Romanella, everybody, his weekly
Wait.
spot here on the Rome Show. Thank you, Rocky.
Winter Classic tickets are on sale today. They're Rangers versus Florida Panthers in Miami. So
All right,
FYI.
let's take a look. All right,
Get
maybe
that.
do some research while you're at breakfast with the kids.
You got it.
All right, Rocky Romanella, he joins us weekly here on the Rome Show. Game number 1 is tonight, ladies and gentlemen, for the Stanley Cup final, and you know what that means. That means
Ba 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 na na.
absolutely. All right, let's go. Obviously, we've talked about who it is, Edmonton versus Florida. The line on this thing is Florida favored in game number 1, okay? So they got the nod, and the over-under in terms of goals is 6.5. So I'm going to take Florida on the money line, even though they are the away team. I just feel like they're going to punch first in this series. I told you I think they're going to win it in 7. And I'm going to take the under 6.5 goals. Think about the stat Rocky just talked about from last year's final. Edmonton wins games, they had to score 5 or more goals on Bobrovsky. Edmonton loses games, that goal total is 4 or less. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game tonight. I think the Florida Panthers want to slow this thing down and make it a mucky-type game, and that's what's going to happen tonight. So give me Florida on the money line and give me under 6.5 goals overall for the entire game. That's the Rome Show here, 12ozsports.com. We broadcast live on YouTube and X. Thank you, Rocky, for joining us today on this
Hump Day.
We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Until then, have an electric Wednesday and peace.
Thank you for listening.